Fine margins. Now, fine margins are what determine the biggest games in world football. Fine margins between the managers, fine margins between the teams, fine margins between individual quality. And I've always said this, that individual quality will always reign supreme. And that's why so many fans of nowadays, we're so desperate for that individual quality that we were so used to in the past. And when you look at it today, you look at the cream of the crop, you look at the elite players, you look at the elite teams, you look at the elite games, they're always decided by elite moments. They're always decided by elite players. And this week was no different. And today I'm going to be talking more in depth about the Arsenal game between Arsenal and Bayern Munich, as well as the Manchester City and Real Madrid clash, in which both English sides crash out in the quarterfinals, leaving the Premier League title race in a very, very patchy moment, as well as Liverpool, who crashed out today as I'm recording this, and also sets up a very, very familiar tie in the semifinals between Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. I want to start off in Munich, and I want to start off with Arsenal in particular, who are definitely going to be the saddest. Of course, they're going to be the saddest. They're the ones who've been knocked out. I think what's going to make Arsenal fans so sad, and Arteta as well, is the fact that coming into this game, we all saw the 2-2 draw at the Emirates Stadium, in which Bayern Munich set up so well. But Arsenal, to an extent, will feel like that was a missed opportunity. I think for them coming into this tie, it was always going to be difficult going back to the Allianz and getting a result, especially if they were not to beat Bayern Munich at the Emirates. Going to the Allianz and needing to beat Bayern Munich, irrespective of how bad Bayern Munich had been this season, that was always going to be a difficult thing to do. Drawing the game 2-2 always left things in a patchy situation for Mikel Arteta's men. I think they fought well in the first leg. I think they controlled the game as much as they could. They had their moments, as well as Bayern Munich did, who set up in a really well mid-block. They countered, and they really stifled Arsenal as best as they could. You see the 2 goals that Arsenal scored, 2 moments of brilliance, as I mentioned in the intro. Gabriel Jesus' chop, Bukayo Saka's wonderful left curler into the bottom hand corner. And I felt like watching this tie, particularly the second leg, I felt like Arsenal just ran out of ideas. I felt like the only player who really looked full of energy and full of dynamism was Martin Odegaard, the captain. And I think you look at the performances he's been putting in for the last 2-3 months. I talked about in my last video, in the title run-in video, he has been exceptional. Even if Arsenal may not get the rub of the green, even if Arsenal may not get the result, you consistently see Martin Odegaard's fingerprints all over Arsenal's performances. And these 2 legs were no different. Second leg, Bukayo Saka was completely anonymous. Martinelli, likewise. Gabriel Jesus coming off the bench, and he doesn't even look confident. You look at the chance that he missed. Now, granted, it was offside, but he should not be putting that chance as high and as wide as he did. It was just a pretty lackluster performance from Arsenal. And it got me thinking about whether this Arsenal team, as well coached and as well managed as they are by Mikel Arteta, I feel like they're too much of a system team, especially someone like Bukayo Saka. We look at Bukayo Saka, you see all the memes about how he's been limping and how he's not been performing well. Now, granted, Bukayo Saka has the numbers this season, but I don't think he's been particularly playing well. He's been getting the numbers, he's been getting the goals, he's been getting the assists, but I don't think he's been playing well. And I don't think that's an illusion. I think sometimes you just have to watch the game. Watch the game and see how a player is playing, and you'll know how a player is playing. In this game, in both legs, he scored in the first leg, but he was stifled in both legs by Bayern Munich. And Arsenal in both legs just looked toothless, particularly the second leg. They looked toothless. They looked like they had no hope that they would win this game. They played the game at a pace and an intensity that of a team that had no real belief in themselves that they could actually go out there and get a result. And I don't know. I feel like if I'm an Arsenal fan watching that game, I would just feel flat. Now, yes, they lost, and I should feel upset. I should feel annoyed, but I feel like I would feel flat because it didn't even look like the team tried. It didn't even look like the team genuinely put in a good performance. And you look at some of the chances they missed: Martinelli, Kai Havertz. It's fine margins. I know it sounds like I'm picking on this team and I'm hating on this team, but Mikel Arteta is a good coach. He's a good coach. No matter what anyone wants to say, he is a good coach. And I think sometimes, especially in the Champions League, you just need your players to bail you out of jail sometimes. You need your players to bail you out of jail. We saw it with Pep Guardiola last season. We've seen it with countless other managers, Zinedine Zidane, Carlo Ancelotti. You need your players to bail you out of jail sometimes. I think his players really did not show that level that they might be. And it begs the question whether this Arsenal team is a system team. I think sometimes when this Arsenal system isn't clicking, just like it wasn't towards the end of 2023, we started to see some cracks. They weren't scoring goals fluently, they weren't defending well. And people were starting to ask questions about whether this Mikel Arteta side is good enough to challenge for the title. Now, obviously, once the system started clicking back into gear, as football fans do, all of a sudden everything's perfectly good for Arsenal, right? But I just feel like they have the pieces. Arsenal have the pieces, but sometimes you just need that X factor player to say, "Give me the ball, give me the ball, and let me do something. Like, give me the ball, let me score a goal and win us this game." Do you get what I mean? And I don't think Arsenal have that. I mean, in both games, they created only two big chances in two games again for Arsenal. The set pieces have been a huge, huge factor in their season. They've been so good from set pieces in both games against Bayern Munich. Both games, I'm looking at my notes here. Both games against Bayern Munich, 5 corners in 2 games of football, two 90-minute games of football, 5 corners. And one of those corners was that corner from Bukayo Saka towards the end that hit the first man. So I think they've been a bit too reliant on their set pieces. Nobody in their team has above 10 goals. I think about from Bukayo Saka. I don't even think Saka has 10 goals in the league. I think sometimes you need a player who consistently bails you out of jail, especially if you want to be at this high level. Especially if you want to be at this high level. I think Arsenal really need that player. And every time I watch them, every single time I look at this team, the same thing comes to my mind. Where is the striker? Where is the striker who bails you out of jail? And to an extent, it looked like a scared Arsenal. It looked like a fatigued Arsenal. And I think chasing Man City for this long is definitely playing a part. I think being so good for so long is definitely playing a part. And unfortunately for them, their two worst performances of the season, Aston Villa now and Bayern Munich, have come at the worst time of the season because now they're out of the Champions League and they've surrendered a 2 point lead at the top of the league to Manchester City. So I'm not saying that they're out of the Premier League title race. That's not what I'm saying. But I think Mikel Arteta is definitely going to have to reevaluate what he wants this team to be. Because I think this team is good system wise. Whenever you're playing against a team that's not better than you, I think this team is definitely flawless. But when you're coming up against those elite players, those elite managers, those elite teams, you need somebody who just bails you out of jail. You need somebody who just says, "Give me the ball. Give me the ball. Let me win this game for us." Do you get what I mean? And I don't think they have that. I genuinely don't think they have that. But let me not just slander Arsenal for the entire time. Let me also talk about the redeeming qualities from Bayern Munich, who are going to progress into the next round despite their lackluster Bundesliga season. They're coming up against Real Madrid. And I feel like this tie was more of Arsenal being poor rather than Bayern Munich being exceptional. Granted, Thomas Tuchel set up his team very well. First leg, mid block against at the Emirates. You're going to a very boisterous atmosphere, and they kind of stifled Arsenal, as I said earlier. They were so good at the Emirates Stadium. They took their chances when they could. They even missed that Kingsley Coman chance at the end that could have clinched a 3-2 result away from home. And Thomas Tuchel once again is showing how good of a Champions League manager he is. He may not be the best man manager. He may not be the best league manager, but when it comes to the Champions League, when it comes to cup competitions, this man knows what he's doing. Harry Kane turned up away from home at the Emirates. He was a bit quiet in the second leg, but as I said before, those individuals, which individuals bail you out of jail? And in the second leg for Bayern Munich, it was Joshua Kimmich. Forget the goal that he scored, he was everywhere. And it also begs the question that I was thinking about recently about whether Joshua Kimmich is actually a right back. You know, we've seen him being experimented as a CDM. He's been labeled as this next Philip Lahm. But is Joshua Kimmich better as a right back? I think, in my opinion, he is. I think Hansi Flick would agree with me. Thomas Tuchel seems to agree with me. And Julian Nagelsmann in the German national team also agrees. So I think maybe Joshua Kimmich himself needs to reevaluate what he's best at. We've seen a lot of rifts between him and Thomas Tuchel, and it seems like he doesn't really want to play that right back position, but he's excelling there. He kind of operates sort of like Trent Alexander-Arnold in the way that he drops deep and receives the ball. But I think, honestly, if Joshua Kimmich continues playing like this, he can rediscover that form that we saw from him 2-3 years ago when Bayern Munich won the Champions League. And who knows where he goes from there. His contract is expiring, I think, next year. But if he continues playing at this level, Bayern Munich have no reason to let him go on a free. But we move now from the former champions of Europe to who I think are going to be the future champions of Europe. You've heard it here now. I think Real Madrid are going to go all the way. But before we touch on that, I think Real Madrid played this tie exactly how they would have wanted to. I think you look last year at the way in which Manchester City beat Real Madrid. They went to the Bernabeu and they knew it was going to be chaotic. They knew it was going to be toxic. They knew it was going to be a boisterous atmosphere, as it always is in the Champions League for Real Madrid. But they handled it well. They got the result they needed and they took it back to the Etihad. And I think this time, with the abolishment of the away goals rule, which I genuinely believe is that's a topic for another day. But I think the way Real Madrid handled this tie, the first leg where they generally could have been up by 2 goals, Manchester City were not that great. And as we touched on in the last game, they had that individual quality that says, sometimes just give me the ball. Give me the ball and I'll do something for you. Phil Foden did that. Riosco Vardio did that for them. Even Bernardo Silva with that free kick. That is an absolutely nifty and incredible thing to do in a game of that magnitude. But you look at the way they set up in the first leg, mid-block, counter-attack with Vinicius, with Rodrigo. No Kyle Walker. That was very, very important and a very big miss for Manchester City. No Kyle Walker meant that they were able to expose the wings of Manchester City and they were able to get in behind. But Manchester City contained them. They contained them, they contained them, they contained them. They got their goals and they took it back to the Etihad at 3-3, basically 0-0. And I think people were slandering Real Madrid online, saying that they shouldn't have played the way they did. They went to the Etihad and they parked the bus. What exactly do you want them to do? I mean, you're going to the home of the European champions, one of the most dominant teams in world football, a team that never gives away the ball, a team that is so efficient with the ball, a team that chokes you. This team, literally, they dominate every team in Europe at home. If it's at the Bernabeu, that's a whole different discussion. But at the Etihad, Manchester City are you can't beat Manchester City at the Etihad, not in 90 minutes. So I think the approach by Carlo Ancelotti makes complete sense, and you saw the difference. You saw the difference this year and between this year and last year. The difference in the legs that Real Madrid had. This year they had Jude Bellingham, they had Valverde, they had Camavinga, they had Vinicius, they had Rodrigo. Legs upon legs upon legs. And for the game to get to 120 minutes, those legs became crucial. The last minute tackles, the clearances, the interceptions, the driving runs to, help your team get respite after a long, long period of consistent pressure from Manchester City. Those legs came in clutch. And whenever you're playing Manchester City, sometimes you just need a bit of physicality, just like Manchester City have. It's not even about your technical play. It's not even about what you can do with the ball. Can you run? Because Manchester City are going to make you run. For 1 minute, 120 minutes, 90 minutes, they're going to make you run. So if you can get up to that challenge, then you've already done half of the job. And that's what Real Madrid did perfectly. They got their goal early on. Fantastic ball over the top. Lovely touch by Jude Bellingham. And Rodrigo scores the first goal. I think that's his 5th goal against Manchester City in about 4 or 5 games. He loves scoring against Manchester City. But look at the way Manchester City played. Again, I said this in the title video. And granted, Manchester City are top of the table at the time of this recording, but they've not been good. I mean, all season long, I've watched Manchester City, and it just feels like something is missing. I feel like there's just that edge, that edge that you say, we're going to go win this, like this game's up for grabs, but we're going to go get this game. And I don't think Manchester City have had that all year. At least against the top teams, they have not had that. And it was shown again this week against Real Madrid. The big chances missed by many players. Bernardo, Foden, De Bruyne, Haaland. Erling Haaland is a player we need to talk about, man. I mean, I think this is common discourse at this point. Erling Haaland is an elite goal scorer, but is he a good footballer? Absolutely not. I think the idea that Erling Haaland is a better player than Kylian Mbappe is complete. That is, if any of you that watch my videos believe in that theory, please click off my videos, because my videos are not for you, because that just tells me you're a stats merchant, and that's not what football is about. Erling Haaland is good at one job, and that's scoring goals. He's good at, and even the scoring goals that he's good at, he feels a bit one-dimensional. I mean, I was looking at the game against Real Madrid, and Rudiger had him he had him in his pocket. I feel like every time Holland comes up against a defender who actually gives him a challenge, a defender who's actually physical with him, a defender who's fast as him, who's fast just like him, or a defender who's as strong as him, he struggles. He really does struggle to get the best of them. And I feel like in these sort of games, these are the games you need Erling Haaland to step up. These are the sort of games you need Kevin De Bruyne to step up. And he didn't. He did not step up. And Phil Foden as well did not step up. He did not step up. Even in the first leg, I felt like he didn't have a great game. He scored, but I felt like that masked over what was an overall pretty mediocre performance. But those moments are what make those mediocre performances seem acceptable because he's doing his job, right? He's doing his job. He's scoring goals. He's defining the game. But in the second leg, he wasn't. He was not there, and it had me questioning, as well as the Erling Haaland point about whether Erling Haaland is genuinely a good footballer, which I don't think he is. I think he's having a very poor season. I think the injuries have definitely hampered his progress, and I also feel like he's not getting as many chances, but he has missed a lot of big chances this year. He's missed a lot of big chances this year, clear cut chances. I just don't think. I think teams have figured him out, and I think the injury to Kevin De Bruyne definitely did not help him either. And I think on Kevin De Bruyne, I don't think Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden should be playing together. I think it's either one or the other. I think you either play Phil Foden or you play Kevin De Bruyne. You cannot play both of them against teams at the highest level. Arsenal's, Liverpool's, Bayern Munich's, Real Madrid's. You should not be playing both of them. Sometimes it's not good to have your best players on the field at the same time. It's one or the other, in my opinion. At least at this point in KDB's career, where he's not as mobile as he was before, he's not as dynamic as he was before. It's one or the other. They get into each other's space. It just feels repetitive. It feels redundant. I feel like you could get so much more by replacing one of them, whether it's De Bruyne or Phil Foden, with a player like Kovacic, who in himself has not done himself glory this season. I think the replacements for Gundogan and Riyad Mahrez have not lived up to the hype whatsoever. The people that have come in to replace them, whether that be Kovacic, Nunez, they have not done justice at all. And they've not filled the boots of those players nowhere near it, to the point that other players are having to do even more to fill those players' boots that have left, whereas those players are sitting on the bench and are not doing anything. So I think Manchester City can look back at this game, as well as the injury to John Stones in the second leg. I think him not being present for literally the entire game, and you saw the positions Akanji was getting into time after time after time. Akanji was getting into very nice and tidy positions in the field that I think if John Stones was in those positions, I think Manchester City could have definitely gotten a lot more out of that. I think you can tell that Manuel Akanji is not comfortable in those positions. You can tell he's not a footballer in those positions. You can tell he's a center back. To put it plainly, you can tell he's a center back. And I don't even mean that to be offensive. That's just his position. So I think Manchester City have to look at this game, and I think the main thing they'll be saying is that they miss those difference makers. They miss those difference makers, your Gundogans, your Riyad Mahrez's. Phil Foden did not turn up in either leg, in my opinion. He scored in the first, but I already explained that. Kevin De Bruyne scored, but missed a huge chance. Bernardo Silva in the second leg, he kind of looked to be running on fumes. He looks like he was definitely stifled by Real Madrid. I think Real Madrid set up so well, so well. When you're playing a team like Manchester City, I mean, towards the end, it was like a boxing match. A boxing match that goes all the way, all the rounds. And at this point, you're both slobber knocking. You're both hurling fists at each other with no sort of coordination. You're not even blocking shots at this point. That was the game towards the end. And it was a perfect display of the two best teams in Europe. And it's a shame that they had to draw themselves in the quarterfinals. It's a big shame that they had to draw themselves in the quarterfinals, because I generally believe this was a game worthy of being the final in itself. But as we've said it many times, and we'll continue to say it time after time after time after time, Real Madrid continued their love story with the Champions League. They qualified for the semifinals for, I think this is the 12th time in the last 14 years. 12th time in the last 14 years. I've not seen my football club play in the Champions League semi-final in 5 years. And even that time, we were humiliated by Liverpool. They're different gravy, man. They're honestly different gravy. But I see them going all the way. I don't see Bayern Munich beating Real Madrid. But you know, anything can happen in football. On the other side of things, I see PSG dispatching of Dortmund, ending their fairy tale story, and I think it's going to be Kylian Mbappe versus Real Madrid, his future employers, in a grandstand Champions League final in London at Wembley, and Real Madrid are going to pick up their 15th. I've seen this movie. I've read this story. I've watched this. I've watched this film. I've seen this one too many times, but it's gonna happen, isn't it? But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have been a huge, huge, huge encourager for me with all the videos. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button down below. Make sure to subscribe if you're interested in this sort of content. As you can see today, I had the face cam on because I hit 100 subscribers and I thought, why not? Let me give them, a little celebratory thing and make these videos more intimate. At least now you can put a face to the name. You can put a face to the voice. So put your comments down below. What did you think about all the things I talked about? Do you think Erling Haaland is an elite player? Do you think that this Real Madrid team is going to win their 15th Champions League? Do you think that Arsenal need that X Factor player, or do you think that they were just running? You think it was just wrong timing and they just hit that bump at the wrong time of the season? Let me know all your thoughts down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care.